welcome to Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, with your host, Evan Ginzburg, Buddy Sotello Esquire, Mike Lano, and our special guest tonight, Evan.
Nikita Breznikov, who is the author of When It Was Real, one of my all-time favorite wrestling books because it's from the heart. And it's really the only wrestling book I ever saw that puts you in that seat from the perspective of a kid, a teenager, the awe and wonder of it all, as opposed to a bombardment of information. I mean, it really came from the heart, and I wholeheartedly recommend it. And we also want to acknowledge that today we're going to honor Mike Lano on his 100th birthday. Yes, he was the kid third row center at Gotch Hackenschmidt and
Abraham Lincoln. While he was there,
Stephen Douglas. They had some good matches back in the day. And Mike was there for all of them.
Yeah, what's that? It was like the Blassie told us of its day back in 1860.
That's right, and Mike was there. Yeah.
Well, nobody gets younger, so but happy birthday to you, Mike.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And you do realize between all of us, we are like 250 years old. So,
Not including Buddy, but I do want to plug Dolly Parton's ice cream. We just had some of that strawberry salted pretzel thing that from
Comes
Jenny.
with a shot of Moderna, I heard.
It's better than a shot of Moderna. And I don't know what it does for COVID, but it goes down pretty good. That is amazing ice cream. That whole
Dolly
lady that
used
makes
her, she donated to get the Moderna vaccine out there. So
she's a hero. She is a national treasure. She really, all these good things that she does for people. Then she didn't want a statue erected of herself. You got to really show that woman some props.
They just tear down statues anyway.
Yeah.
And this segment brought to you by Dollywood.
That's right.
I kind of want you guys, just off topic of wrestling, I'll just throw out there, do any of you guys like doing driving vacations and seeing parts of the U.S. you've never seen, or Canada?
I've driven across the United States twice, actually 2.5 times, so I can definitely say that Weird Al Yankovic's song, The Biggest Ball of Twine in Minnesota, resonates with me, if you've ever heard.
Yeah. So were you looking for weird off-the-road attractions, like the dinosaurs on the way to Palm Springs and stuff?
Well,
cool.
when I drove with my best friend, this is actually the 30th year anniversary of when I drove with my best friend from college, my first year of law school. We drove his dad's car from Ocean City, from Bethesda, Maryland, all the way to Sacramento. Wow. And we drove down to Graceland. So we made the trip extra south so I could see we could see Graceland, Tennessee, then back up to the Football Hall of Fame, Cleveland, Ohio, into Chicago, then across to Denver, then down through Utah, and then back to Sacramento.
What about speaking of Sacramento, the road trip you and I took from Oakland or somewhere thereabouts to see Don Geronimo in concert in Sacramento?
That's right. We did. That was a completely different thing. We'll have to have our own separate show about that. But Evan, we got to get you on a cross country road trip so we can have you out here in California.
The greatest vacation I ever went on was to Memphis in 1992. In the 3 or 4 days I was there, I went to the Mid-South Coliseum to see the Moondogs against Lawler and Jarrett. Then they had the same match at a dog track in Arkansas. Okay? And we were dressed in jeans and T-shirts, but we didn't look like we belonged because we had teeth.
You were overdressed.
Yeah.
You were overdressed.
Dr. Mike Lano will appreciate that. At the dog track, there's a sparsity of teeth down there. So they were looking at us like, where these Yankees from? And we went to Graceland, and we went to Al Green's church for services. It was the greatest musical thing I've ever seen. Right. Oh my God. He's hosting it, and in the course of like the greatest 4 hours of music you could imagine, some homeless guy comes in off the street and Al Green anoints him with the holy water. And like people are like running around shrieking. It was wild. Al Green's full gospel church, or I forget the exact name, but it's like a mile from Memphis. Great.
Reverend Al. Boy, we idolized him in the 70s, without a doubt.
He just turned 75 the other day. I feel old. Al Green, 75.
Yeah, you got another at least 10 there, Lano, before you can reach Al Green status. So keep plugging away.
Let's ask Nikita, have you done some road trips, or what are some of your favorite vacations, things to do?
Well, now, I, like Russell, have gone across country twice. Once to bring the wife to the East Coast, and then after I retired from the police department, we packed up the truck and moved to Beverly. We came the other way, so I've done that twice. But when you go through Montana, it's just like a never-ending, just a repeat of trees and trees and trees. It's like, oh yeah. And it was 100 degrees when we made the trip. It was in the last week of June, and it was like, oh my God, I think I'm going to die. Air conditioning worked. It was fine, but it's just like, there's the heat. So
we did it across the country in a Honda, 1980 Honda that had no air conditioning and just an AM FM radio that we had a tape player put in just before we left. So we had like all the tunes that we could have, but there was no space whatsoever in the Honda. It was just, and we couldn't get a speeding ticket because we couldn't go any faster than 65. We had one of those big metal boxes on the top to fit everything. So the fastest we could possibly go was 65 miles per hour. And so everybody on the freeway was just passing us like, super fast. And we just kind of slowly chugged our way across the U.S.
Well, I got to get this plug in like I always do for prostate cancer. Please, everybody get tested. But here's how it ties in. When we did our cross country coming back, we had the mint that my wife had planted the year I was recovering. And I became friends with bees from all of that because she had to go to work, and we had a drought in Maryland. So she said, you got to water the mint. I said, look at all those bees. I'm not going to stick my hand in there. You're crazy. She's like, they know your scent. You exhale. They are very strong with their sense of smell. So I said, all right, I'll try it. Yeah, so here I come. They'll sting me. And they were great. Became friends with a few. So we packed some of that mint with us and came cross country. And this year we celebrate 20 years that mint has been replanted. So it's like, hey, we do our part for the environment. And the bees love it. So that's great.
Nice. Very nice.
Nikita, you mentioned you're a retired officer. Any comments on everything that's going on now? Because I've had 2 uncles and a half dozen friends who are police, and I'm well aware there are good cops and bad cops. But even such an innocuous statement like that gets heat today because, it's so anti-police out there. But what's your take on it all?
Well, the last 3 years, and it was because of wrestling that I spent in the police department, I was in internal investigation division because I was working domestic violence for a long time, and then that got eliminated, or most of the funding got eliminated because of Homeland Security, which we were all together after 9/11 as one big happy family. That's all been forgotten. God forbid if it happens now, because police are at least operating 40% less across the country. It's unbelievable because people are saying, here's my shit, I'm done.
We're too busy shooting ourselves right now for terrorists.
Get the lawyers, get the politicians, get the activists, call 911, send a call to their house and let them come out and handle it. Hey, look, it's true. We hire from the human race. There's been shit out there. But when I worked internal investigation, nothing was ever swept under the carpet. Most police called in on other police. Most of the complaints were initiated by them. It's like you hear this, there's the thin blue wall. No, there's the thin blue line, dummies. And if it's broken, the gates of hell will be unleashed. And I think we hear the lock clicking. The key is in it. It's like a little bit more. And when you pick up that phone, you expect, okay, police are on their way. It may not happen. And now I read other comments. People say, you know what the hell's going to happen? 20 years ago, people that walk in the door with an application, you tell them, get the hell out of the building. There's no way. Now you're going to have the Keystone Cops. That's what's going to be left out there. And you're going to have shootings every day. You're going to have horrible things every day because, look, I'll put most of it like this. All of us here of the same era. We played outside. We wrestled. We boxed. We fought with each other. We knew we were not going to die from that. This thumb generation that sits in front of the television and just plays video games, then they get set loose. They go to the police academy. They watch these horror shows about people with knives and guns, and then they've never had a fight in their life. And when an adult male comes at them, they panic. In some cases, they do. This thing with the police woman, I don't know. I don't have any explanation for it because you're trained.
The taser, doesn't it feel different in your hand than
Yeah, it doesn't look or feel anything like a gun.
I never touched it. It was before my time, Dr. Mike. But it is on the other side of your gun hand, your strong hand. So I don't know how it happened. But the scenario of police just want to go out and do harm, it's like, no. I don't think so. Where I came from in Baltimore, we were 50-50 on the force, half white, half black, a little other, ethnicities mixed in. But it's like, so what do you say to them? Did they resign from being African American? No. But then the lawyers tag that as institutional racism so they can cash a check. And it's like, come on, man, there's no such thing. They're there. They're sticking their head in the noose in the lion's mouth every day, taking a chance. And it's like, you know what? I want to see the talkers do 1 week in patrol. Okay. It can't be done, obviously, but it's like, you wouldn't believe it. You'd say, like, forget this. You're crazy. There's no way I'm going to continue with this. And for the pay you get, from years ago when I started, oh boy, we did it because we loved it. But see, what people lose track of when they talk about police being aggressive towards African Americans. If you're working in an African American community, who are the victims? Other African Americans, because that's the makeup of the population that's there. So what you're doing is you're protecting them. Look, I tell you, sometimes it's like a bad wrestling angle. And it's like the politicians that come out and say defund. It's like, okay, what if we get hit again like we did 9/11? What are you going to have? Military parading through your street? You don't want that. If you think police are bad, wait till you get these guys that are shaking in their boots or they're trigger happy. It's like, that's not a good scenario. National Guard included. You don't want that. But friends, I'm afraid that we're at the point where our enemies are watching and they're saying, they're salivating because they're saying United States is getting primed for the taking, baby. And they may be at our doorstep.
At this stage, who wants us? We're a mess. It's easier they're probably, the conditions in whatever country they're in is probably better than, China doesn't want to take us over. They already own 3/4 of it. Russia already had its shot at us with Putin and everything that went on with Trump. They already took over whatever they could take. So there's not that much left. The Japanese already own a good portion of us. The British already own a good portion of us. So but whatever we had that was worth something has already been taken.
It would be a trophy. They would like to do it. Just the
same. How did we get to this point? Because Nikita, I think it was Nikita, or maybe it was you, buddy, who said, right after 9/11, we were united. We were united with police, Nikita, first responders, and firemen and women.
Rudy Giuliani looked like a nice guy after 9/11.
With all this craziness and the Ted, what's his face out of Texas, and Mitch McConnell and all that.
Ted Cruz.
Yeah, Ted Cruz. How did we get to that point? Because it was happening before Trump. I'd love to blame Trump, but Trump, getting in bed with Russia, but it almost does feel like, Russia.
McConnell helped push things over, and a lot of people reacting to, the negativity of Obama. They were empowered because they didn't like Obama as a black president. that brought a lot of people forward and gave them power that normally didn't have that kind of power.
But that's got nothing to do with the police, anti-police.
No, but it has to do
what
with
happened was the media. They got to fill airtime.
Yeah.
So they hit the headlines. Now, I'll tell you what, they struck again with this COVID vaccine that Johnson & Johnson, whatever they put out, is called blood clots in a minuscule number. Now, people that have been on the fence are going to say, oh, I'm not touching that now because look what happened. It's like, do we need that right now? Do we really need that negativity? We need as many people vaccinated as possible. We're never going to get 100%. You're always going to have conspiracy.
We're not going to get, Fauci said we need to approximate herd immunity 75 to 80%. We'll be lucky if we get to 60. Honestly.
Exactly.
So what's going to happen? What's going to happen there? I mean, we went out yesterday for the first time since February of last year for my birthday. We went to an outdoor dining thing, and we were probably 30 feet away from any other couple because we made the reservation months ago. I said, hey, I don't feel comfortable even eating out. It's kind of risky for an old fart like me, as you said, 100 years old. But it was okay. But I mean, I was like nervous. So 13 and a half months, maybe 14 months since even eating anywhere near a restaurant. We've not gone to a restaurant and ate outside until yesterday. And I guess I survived.
Yeah. We'll find out in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It seems like this week has been the break where people have just said the hell with it and they're loose. And here they come. And it's like, that's smart.
I'm not loose. I had my paper mask with a cloth mask over.
Oh, yeah, with the mask. Yeah, of course, sure.
And I kept saying it. So it was totally outdoors. It was at this place, Rogers Gardens, a nursery, fancy schmancy, the Disneyland of nurseries, and they have a fancy-ass restaurant. And great.
I think it comes down to, attention span. We've grown up as a generation, as you guys maybe not so much as mine, and certainly the generation beyond mine. Every generation gets a lower and lower attention span, and so today's kids are really used to things being in like 15-second increments. For them, commercials.
Span theater, like Evan and at least the three of us as older gents. I mean, I was entertained by Jack Briscoe, Johnny Valentine, where Valentine had a headlock on Briscoe for like 12 minutes, and they kept working and working and working and cranking it. And we saw that and I saw it in APW, Oliver John and Tim Thatcher.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Watched that match intensely, and they tried to replicate the Briscoe-Johnny Valentine match from 1971 in Florida. And it was awesome, but a lot of people were yelling, boring, and it just made my blood boil, that they were into that short attention span theater. And I, into the high spots and the young bucks and all of that, but I certainly love, that.
Working a hold. Nobody can work a hold now.
Well, you just nailed it, though, Dr. Mike. They don't want to see that. They want you to jump out of a third-story flaming building and crash through 6 tables and chase a bus.
And then jump right back up.
Yeah, don't sell it.
Oh, yeah, no selling.
Yeah.
No psychology, I mean, I caught a cold, and after I had my second vaccine, a month after it, I caught a cold, and so I thought, well, maybe I'm that 10% that might have caught COVID. So I went and had a COVID test. I was negative, but I go, how on earth can I get sick? I'm wearing the mask everywhere, even when I'm driving to some place where I'm not around anybody. But I still got it. So,
but let me talk to you, Nikita, for a second, which is because you're a manager too. Selling, we were just talking about how nobody wants to sell. As a manager, that was like the best part to me of being a manager, was overselling what was a really like what normally would be, a thing that a wrestler would shrug off. For me, as a manager, to take one punch and then to like lie down on the floor for like another good 5 or 6 minutes, writhing and making it seem like, the world had ended. A couple times people would come up to me and say, "Are you okay? Did that guy really hit you?" I'm like, yeah, I really pulled one over on him. But now nobody wants to sell. It's like the worst thing in the world to try to sell, or when the selling happens, it's totally unconvincing. As a point I'm trying to get to is that I was watching Raw. Forgive me, but I was watching Raw on Monday night, and
We're
they
sorry.
had the three-way. Yes, they had the three-way match between Drew McIntyre, Braun Strowman, and I'm sorry,
and Randy Orton.
And Randy Orton. I remember that. That was just awful. And Braun Strowman takes like a clothesline and rolls out of the ring and is out of action for a good 4 minutes of the match. Where you're like, there's no way Braun Strowman just went through crazy stuff with Shane McMahon straight for, a 10-minute match the night before. Why is a simple clothesline knocking him out for 4 straight minutes when he's
the writers told him to get out of it because the three-way matches are so ridiculous. You can't have 3 guys fighting for very long against one another. So one guy's got to take a powder and go out for a while.
There you go. There you go.
When Evan brought up about George Steele and Bruno, now here's a tie into this conversation. George Steele would say, don't beat me, or I don't win. You beat me. That's what they want to see. I don't win, you beat me. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Captain Lou, the greatest manager of all time, I'd have to say.
Yep.
He hated. Nobody pinned him, not because of ego, but it's like, don't take my heat away. I'll blade, murder me, look like I've been run over, I'm half dead, but don't pin him because then the Chief can have a shot at him. Then Bruno, then Pedro. I mean, anytime Evan and Dr. Mike, when we would be East Coast, Lou Albano and Bruno, everybody else can have the night off. The building will fill. That's it. They want to come see that lynching right there. Get Lou Albano. Just get that son of a bitch. And he'd get a couple of minutes, eye raking, do this, and then that's it. Bruno would just explode and boom. And we loved it.
The fans
how do you have it today with no blood, guys? Tell me.
The fans who were not there have no idea how great heel Albano was.
You're wrong. We're dumb. We don't know what we're talking about. Listen to those guys. Shit.
I mean, Albano would come out and all like out of his mind. Then he'd say something on the mic. Then Bruno or Strongbow or Putski, whomever, would clock him. He'd be like a fish out of water on the mat. There was unbelievable heat. The match hadn't started. The place was like on fire. And they go, oh, Lou, he wasn't much of a wrestler. And
come on.
They weren't there.
But that would be usually a feud that would take several months to build up.
Not even a feud. He would just come out as a manager with his protege, and they'd clock him, and the place would go nuts.
Do you guys remember, and Evan, well, everybody remembers this, but I think it was only at TV the managers could stay out during the duration of the match. At Madison Square Garden, they just came out with the guys, whether it was The Wiz, Blassie, or Lou, and then they had to go to the back in the 70s until approximately maybe 81, they could stay out longer and get involved. And I don't know if that was a commission thing. Evan, do you know why? Or Nikita, why were managers not allowed in the 60s and 70s to stay out for the match and interfere and do all that stuff?
You just nailed it. That friggin' New York State Athletic Commission was a pain in both cheeks of your ass. And if you notice, if you go back to look at some of the old matches, they slap Blassie on the leg, almost knock him off the aprons. Come on, let's go, get out of here. I wrote about it in the book when it was real. I had an incident as a manager in New York, and the guy, he stalked me. The managers don't touch. I said, okay, I got you, no problem. We're not going to work that angle. 10 times this son of a bitch has bothered me. 10 friggin'. I said, look, pal. I pulled out my badge. I said, I'm off-duty police. I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to do it because he's threatening me with not just fines, but criminal action. I'm like,
yeah.
I got letters from the New York State Athletic Commission about don't throw matches. And I'm like, what are they talking about? So I get on the phone. I call up. I said, guys, it's wrestling. He said, we know. This is for the boxing end of it. But since you're a registered manager, you got to get it too. And I'm like, man, these guys are too full of themselves. And I loved like Billy Caputo. And, they became part of that New York State Athletic Commission. They were good guys, Terry Terranova, but it was like, and, other people that went on to that. And it's like, but they would make such a fuss. And it's like the 11 p.m. curfew. Women couldn't perform for a long time. Kids weren't allowed for a long
No
time.
masks. No
Teen.
masks.
Jeez.
Well, remember the El Olympico and Don Jardine as the spoiler in 72 and 73, they had to, at least at the Garden only, they had to have the whole face cut out of their mask. But somehow Mascaras, when he debuted for Vince in 73 against Don Jardine had to have the hole in his mask, his face hanging out. Not Mascaras. Obviously, he wouldn't go there if he had to have any part of his face showing, because he always protected himself. But I thought that was weird. And kids under 14 until probably 77, 78, kids couldn't go.
I went in 74 and I was 14. So
Was that the Garden or Nassau Coliseum, though? Nassau, the kids.
No, at the Garden. Garden was 14, yeah.
All right, maybe they did away with that by 73, 74.
Now, California's version of Elijah the Ghost was the California State Athletic Commission. It was always rumored that the California State Athletic Commission would show up at a wrestling event, indie wrestling event. I never, and I still haven't seen the California State Athletic Commission ever show up. But they were always threatening to show up.
They did at Kirk's Waits because he was doing some unlawful, some cheesy things. He kept advertising, I think, Sabu, when he knew Sabu wasn't going to make it for the 2 days prior to the show. So the commission guy, who was Asian American, who I was friends with, he did show up at Kirk's BTW shows quite a few times at down in Newark, California.
I know for a couple of feds that some guys would send, someone to pretend they were the California State Athletic Commission and try to collect money from the indie feds.
That was collected money
with a little plastic badge that you get, from the kid section, the kid, police badge or something like that, and try to say they were with the. But as far as I know, no indie wrestling fed has ever been shut down in Northern California due to.
They did in Washington State and Oregon. They would shut things down. And
that's a different commission. But the California State Athletic Commission is a phantom. But
the weird thing about that was both on Roy Shire's TV in the 60s and at least early 70s till about 73. And, of course, so Shire was my secondary home-based territory to shoot for the program. Ringside LA LaBelle was the first. But on the TV shows, the English version TV shows, not the Spanish International Network syndicated SIN thing, where you guys got our Wednesday night TV from the Olympic Auditorium, but our little TV studio Saturday nights with Dick Lane and Jimmy Lennon Sr., they had to always verbally read, and they did it as fast as they could. These wrestling exhibitions are sanctioned by the California State Athletic Commission. So that almost was exposing the business when people would say, exhibition? That sounds like it's scripted entertainment.
It's predetermined. Kayfabe is dead. Yes, I wish it would come back. A lot of ways I wish.
But to hear Dick Lane do that So while we're talking about managers, maybe I could just ask you three guys, who were your 5 favorite managers? And your list could probably go way, way beyond, I'm sure Nikita's list could go way, way beyond that. So many great ones. Gary Hart, I'm getting away from the triumvirate, the 3 great ones for Vince Sr. But there was a lot of other great ones. Even Don Carson or Bearcat Wright, they were good managers. Ernie
Humperdinck with the blondes.
The managers that influenced me the most were obviously Bobby the Brain Heenan, Jim Cornette, Jimmy Hart, the Grand Wizard, and then if number 5 on that list, as much as I love Captain Lou Albano, and he was very influential, I got to put Andy Kaufman in there as number 5 for me, because I thought
more a wrestler than a manager.
I've always thought of him more as a manager because of the way he did his promos.
Right.
And that, true, he was part of, he got in the ring more than just he also managed a couple of, I think the Colossus or something like that. He had some guy with a silly mask on called the Colossus that he managed. And he also managed the Assassins a couple times. So, but his ability to insult a crowd and generate heat and using Bob's Muda as a plant in his audience so that he could tell how the audience was reacting to stuff was sheer genius, and it changed everything as far as what I did as a manager. I really tried to learn a lot of his psychology and Andy Kaufman's psychology, and the fact that he could insult the hell out of people but not work blue and not be an actual racist or be profane in that way. I thought he was fantastic.
Let me just say quickly that Bob Samuda was Kaufman's manager. I had to deal with him when Lawler and I talked about, and I said, well, it should be pretty easy to get the okay from his family to approve a wrestling action figure, a WWF Hasbro action figure. It was Hasbro at the time, with Lawler in a box set. And so I had to call up Samuda, and he said, oh, yeah, I'll call up his sister and parents. I think it was just his mom that was left alive, Andy's. And it couldn't have been greater. And you guys know when Andy Kaufman would do, what was that character, the lounge singer?
Clifton.
Yeah, Tony Clifton. Well, more often than not, or a lot of time they would, just have Bob Samuda get into the gear, and people could not tell if it was Kaufman or Samuda doing Tony Clifton, which is brilliant. And last thing, I know it's for me, it's the Andy Kaufman Holy Grail. I haven't been able to locate on YouTube. Out of the many times Andy did the intergender wrestling on Saturday Night Live, I think the first time he had, speaking of managers, Buddy Rogers come out to manage him. So it was like E2, and he had him come out there on an SNL. It's like the Frank Zappa hosted Saturday Night Live. You can't find it because Lorne Michaels had it scrubbed. He hated that episode so much. But I don't know about why is the Buddy Rogers one, because to have Kaufman standing next to Buddy Rogers, it doesn't get better than that.
Nikita, why don't you tell us about your managers that influenced you?
Not influence, but maybe your favorites. It could influence, but favorites. I'm just talking about favorite as entertainers.
For who?
For you.
Yeah.
It's the three wise men of the East, Albano, Blassie, and the Wizard. Then it would be Arnold Skolin and Buddy Rogers. When Rogers came in, that whole thing with Snuka in 1982, that was well done. And then I liked the Rogers Corner segment. He wasn't over the top. He spoke sensible. It actually was good, common sense approach to what he did. And then when they put Rogers back in the ring after all those years, geez, that was great. We went crazy. I was lucky enough in Baltimore. I think I saw his last match because that was September 17th of 83. Then he got hurt. And because he was supposed to do the series in the Garden, this was after the Ray Stevens angle, and him and Snuka went against Ray Stevens and Albano. This was the Morocco situation. Then he apparently slipped in the Garden, hurt his back. There was a whole big shebang over that, lawsuits, the whole routine until Rogers was done. So
did he do much in the ring? What did he do?
Yeah, he did pretty good because now the Thanksgiving show at the Spectrum in 1982. He started the match. He was in there with Stevens for a while. The Albano thing was just boom, 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 no problem. But he did. He actually was in there, Dr. Mike, for a good 5-10 minutes. And then again, that was, I don't know how many years he'd been out of the ring. It had to be 10 at least. He looked good. He stayed in good shape. Like he said, hey, anybody in that Camden, Cherry Hill area, they know I'm in the gym. I'm ready to go. So it was well done. I like that.
He was in 77 in Charlotte. George and Sandy Scott brought him in to sort of pass the torch to Flair. So he'd work tag matches against Ric Flair. They would do Battle of the Figure 4 leg locks, which was tremendous. And I had already Japan had gotten my plane tickets in 1992. It was like February or March for the Joel Goodhart TWA show where it was going to be a tremendous card. And anyway, Joel had to pull the plug on it, but it was going to be Rogers, Battle of the Nature Boys against Buddy Landell. And underneath that, Doc and Terry Gordy and Steve Williams against Crawford and Furnace from All Japan. It was an all-star card. And second from the bottom was going to be another Sheik Abbey rematch. So all-star Legends card, Terry Funk against Kevin Sullivan, Medusa, Luna Vachon, Mick Foley as Cactus. So we missed that, but so the Rogers Corner, one of my favorites in terms of history, he had the Grand Wiz, Ernie Roth. He had Blassie, Ray Stevens, himself, there's Buddy, and there was like one other total legend. I go, Blassie. I go, man, is this? I'll see these guys, in like one frame together. That's wrestling history. So what did you think of Buddy against Ray Stevens? That's pretty damn huge deal.
They both put on a wrestling exhibition for the time they were in there. Of course, everybody was Snuka. They wanted to see Snuka come in and murder Stevens after the pile driver incidents. But Rogers and Stevens, they did legitimately show us what they could both do, wrestle. So, and now for the Baltimore situation, when it was Snuka and Morocco against Rogers and Snuka, or Morocco and Albano, yeah, he didn't do a whole lot in that match. It was Baltimore. I mean, I'm not slighting anybody. It was my city, but it's kind of like, all right, we're not in the Garden of Baltimore. I'm not going to kill myself because I'm an older guy. So he was in for maybe 2 or 3 minutes. But that Spectrum match, that Thanksgiving 1982, yeah, he gave you you got your money's worth without a doubt.
And Ray had been through 2 tremendous, almost career-ending motorcycle accidents, so he was not the Ray Stevens of old. But if you would have taken those guys from like Ohio in 1959 or 1960, before Roy Shire scooped up and grabbed a lot of talent, including Ray, and took him out to San Francisco, Buddy against Ray at that point in time, that would have been a 5-star match for that period.
See, they never really used Stevens right on the East Coast, whether it was 72 or 82. He didn't get a match with Backlund in the Garden. He did get a match with Backlund in the Meadowlands and a couple other places, but it was kind of like he just didn't get that push. It was more about him and Snuka. And then against
Ray Stevens was like Ric Flair here in the Bay Area.
Right. Most people say, Ric Flair is indebted to Ray when he came into Mid-Atlantic because he taught him to flip over the turnbuckle. That was all Ray Stevens. And if you want to talk about Ray in his prime, though, it was the 2 matches, title versus title, U.S. title of Ray's versus Bruno's. Roy Shire billed it as the world title at the Cow Palace. 2 out of 3 fall both times. The first one, the third fall, they were counted out of the ring. They each got a fall, but people still rave about that the way they do Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask at the Garden. They still say it was the greatest series of matches.
Ray Stevens finally made it into the WWE Hall of Fame. They managed to squeeze him in there in between the Bellas.
That's right.
He deserves it, obviously, but we would like to have seen it on a grander scale, but he's there, so that's good.
I told you guys, and I haven't told Nikita this, one of the times I was shooting, actually, I have so many favorite places to shoot. We're talking about favorite managers. We haven't got to Evan yet. But at Kiel Auditorium, one of my all-time favorite places, and Evan knows because he came in 1992 to help me put on that convention there, the Munchna convention. But I got to see Ray against Pat O'Connor in a 20-minute Broadway, 1975, and they just had their working shoes on. I was marking out for that shooting at ringside. That was great.
That had to be, yeah.
And then Ray and Nick taking their summer vacation. They were AWA tag champs. They actually, Vern didn't want them defending their title on Eddie Graham shows, but they did. And, against like Eddie Graham and Don Curtis and stuff like that. And tremendous. Ray and Nick, one of the best tag teams of all time.
I cry tears that they didn't team Stevens and Patterson up while they were both here in 1982, but it just wasn't going to work out. There was no time. And
Pat did the favor. That's the thing I've written several articles about in magazines was Pat, because he had Vince Sr. and especially Junior's ear, he was responsible for bringing in Snuka, San Francisco guy. He had all those main events there. Peter Mavia, obviously, Rocky Johnson, his first time. Morocco, who was a big, huge deal for Roy Shire. First place he turned heel before Florida. And then Ray, that was him throwing a bone to Ray, getting him into the, one last series of paydays for a couple of years for Vince. So that was all because of Pat. But yeah, it was a real shame that you guys couldn't have seen them. But, Ray was way beyond his peak years. Even though he did great with Pat in the AWA, they were fine. But you really want to look at old Ray Stevens prior to the motorcycle accidents, because the first one he had in '63, they could have sold out. Honestly, the Candlestick Park, where the Giants played. The outdoor stadium was for Pepper against Ray Stevens. They had done the thing where Ray jumped off the ladder onto Pepper's, not his cast iron stomach, but his neck, and all of that stuff. And then Ray screwed up that thing. They had to refund everybody their money back because Ray was injured and they couldn't do the match at the Candlestick Park in San Francisco.
Dr. Mike, I love that list you ran down because Pat was a scout as well as a top star and a commentator. But there's one other one, Sergeant Slaughter. I'm pretty sure he brought the Sergeant. He worked with him in the past. He knew him very well. And it's like, okay, what do we do with him? Sergeant Slaughter. And it was just like, boom. His feud with Patterson is what set Slaughter into orbit, without a doubt.
Did Pat ever work with the Masked Superstar for Vince? He must have. I'm sure he did. But that would have been great, the series of promos there.
Pat feuded with Mosca and
Patera,
Ivan Koloff, Patera, Backlund, and Slaughter.
Jesse the Body.
Patterson's big feuds.
Yeah, I don't think he ever had a. They had to have a match somewhere, but I don't know what. Mass Super.
It's just been, great stuff. Obviously, were both of you guys at the Pat Slaughter, the famous match at the Garden?
No, I was there the month before. I made a mistake. Yeah.
But Evan, I want to hear about your top 5 managers or the managers.
My top 5 managers: Lou Albano, number 1. I love that man with all my heart. Grand Wizard, number 2. I love Cornette. I think the Midnight Express were the greatest tag team of all time. And I'll go with Gary Hart and Humperdinck. See, I saw Heenan in WWE, and it was like a lot of comedy stuff. Earlier Heenan, which I didn't get to see as much. I appreciated more. But in WWE, sometimes it got a little cartoonish.
His really good stuff is Indianapolis. Not that much footage exists, but when he came to Georgia Championship Wrestling, and he's managing Killer Carl Cox. Who else was he managing? Lanza, of course. And someone
Bobby
else.
Duncombe?
Maybe it was Duncombe Sr., but he had a little stable there. But particularly Carl Cox was his main guy. Heenan was tremendous as a heel, and take no prisoners heel. Or watch his stuff in Chicago 70s for Bob Luce. He had that long feud with his actual legit best friend, but you would never know it the way they would scream at each other. Him and Pepper Gomez were very, very close behind the scenes, but they had some real magic in Chicago, which was it wasn't an AWA city. It was half Vern, half Dick the Bruiser WWA. So they would blend in. You would see guys coming into the Chicago amphitheater, and I was lucky enough to shot there a couple of times. Bo Brazil, who never worked for the AWA really, he would come in and he could have some, undercard match, second from the bottom with Ray Stevens. I mean, come on, Bobo and Ray Stevens. Great stuff. Yeah. But wait, Evan, what about Blassie? Let me hear your thoughts. Even if he wasn't in your top 5, what did you think of Blassie? Because he had cool periods where he managed the turncoats, but that followed him managing all the foreign wrestlers.
Well, Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik when he managed.
I always enjoyed Blassie, but I enjoyed the other guys more.
Yeah.
Just personal preference.
Now, for me, I love the way Blassie would say you got to punch your own mother in the nose. And he was it's about money. And he'd say, look, Backlund, you get out here and say you're going to give 100% for the fans. Oh, you got to pay bills too, like all of us. What's money, money, money? And it's like, that was legitimate. That's what the hell everybody comes to the arena for and goes through hell every night. They got to get the paycheck. I loved his transition from a wrestler. He was having the eye problems and everything else. So it's like, okay, they made a manager of him. And his first protege was Nikolai. Yeah. So it was like, he was off to the races. Then with the Arion situation, it's like, oh man, as we all know, it was just like heat. Arion got stabbed back in Philadelphia at the arena. It's like hated. Yeah, Zbyszko was probably the worst of all, but Arion, I think, is a very hair close second. That was just so much heat. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, because they were so close, and they went back to Bruno and Tony Pugliese, a.k.a. Tony Parisi, teaming with Arion in the 60s. So they had all this history, which was actually acknowledged on TV when Arion turned, which I guess wasn't it late '74, early '75 when he turned.
Yes.
And John Arisi and I shot that ringside in two at Madison Square Garden, and I guess it was Philly. No, it was Boston Gardens. And oh man, the heat was out of this world. Arion was out of this world. What a great worker. And look, if you want to see more Spiros Arion doing his thing as a babyface, look at the Australia stuff that's on YouTube. Him teaming with Mark Lewin against Sheik and Abby, and Sheik and Killer Kowalski. Magic. Great stuff.
See, that's why with Maivia, and I love the guy, I thought he did a great job. His heel turn was a little bit rushed. Okay, they saying he trained Backlund in college and all this other bullshit. It's like, come on, we're not buying that. It was more that he turned on Strongbow where the heat was, because they were an established team. So that really got him over. Whereas, see, Victor Rivera, he was on his way over. So they brought him in as a heel because in a couple of months they were going to do Maivia. And as you know, we didn't have heel turns like they do today, back and forth. So it was like, all right, Victor, you just come in, you got constipated, now you're with Blassie, and that's it. And he took off. And he did a great job as a heel. I mean, Victor Rivera's all-time great. But I watched the match the other night of him against Bob Duncombe in 1975 at the Garden. People don't talk about that, but wow, that was a classic match. And Duncombe gets left in the dust because, to me, he's monster top 10 heel without a doubt. He could do it.
Always great, Duncombe. He's underrated.
Yes, way underrated.
Well, I wanted to, since we all managed to survive WrestleMania last week, I wanted to see what your guys' WrestleMania memories are, what your favorite WrestleMania memories might be. I can, Evan, I can skip you if you don't want to have to come up with one.
My favorite WrestleMania memory was when the Continental Nobleman Joe Turco pinned Randy Orton clean.
Yeah, I had a feeling this was coming.
Was great. That was great. Did that not happen?
Not quite.
It was Gypsy Joe Rosario, Evan.
Oh, okay.
Good.
He pinned Orton.
Well, look, honestly, seriously, I would say the greatest WrestleMania match was Savage and Steamboat.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, it was that's your favorite WrestleMania moment? You'd say?
Well, I haven't seen all 37, but from what I've seen, I would put Savage and Steamboat because that was just a great match.
Yeah, no, even today, people look at it and say it was, a dictionary definition of how great a match can be, especially that was for the Intercontinental title, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and also that the tournament where Randy Savage won the world title, that tournament itself, I thought, was one of the best booked tournaments.
That was WrestleMania 4, I think. I
think it's 4. Yeah, WrestleMania 4.
Tower, and it had the dream match of Savage against DiBiase in their WWF primes.
Yeah, and it was, all the matches, all the matchups were really good in that. It never felt forced, and they were all like ones where you weren't really sure who was going to get over on each round because they were so evenly matched, and you weren't really sure which one was going to be more pushed. So I genuinely didn't think that Randy Savage was necessarily going to win. So that was something. Also, the Greg Valentine versus Tito Santana cage match in WrestleMania 1 was really great because that ended off a feud, such a huge feud.
They were in a cage in WrestleMania 1? I don't remember that.
No,
they weren't. Or was that just a regular? That was just a regular ring.
Yeah, that was a house show.
That was in Baltimore. Yeah, WrestleMania 1, and I was really not deep into it, but Tito he wrestled.
The Executioner. That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Who was Buddy Rose? Buddy Rose, I think, was the one that was under the Executioner.
Yes, Buddy Rose. Yeah, another underrated guy.
Yeah, another underrated guy, definitely.
He was big here in the Bay Area. When he had those big feuds here in the Bay Area against Roddy Piper. Buddy Rose did. When
And I bet Pat was responsible for
Snuka had the big matches with Buddy Rose, and his tag partner was Easy Ed Wiskowski, who later became Colonel De Beers, and they were managed by fantastic, I'm going to forget his name, Dr. Ken Ramey, who had managed the interns and all up and down the South. He was pretty much a Nick Boulis, Jerry Jarrett manager, but he came out and managed them, and all three of those guys could talk up a storm. It was an awesome period. 77, 78 San Francisco.
We had him for one taping as the Polish Prince, and he just didn't make it. Don't know why. Wiskowski, don't know what happened. And then here comes Mighty Joe Thunder. He made one taping, and it was like
Joe Thunder?
Mighty Joe Thunder.
Well, who was that?
I have no idea, because he made one television taping. He was announced for the Spectrum for the September 18th show. Of course, that wasn't going to happen. It's like, man, they're pushing this guy quick. He was a big guy. He was about 6'8". He, moved a little bit like Herman Munster in the ring. He didn't have a whole lot, but apparently he pissed somebody off. But the one that we cried tears over is Ox Baker. Made the one taping in 1980, and then that was it. Something happened. And no Ox, because that would have been fantastic.
He had worked for Vince Sr. in the 60s, around 63, 64, as Doug Baker. He did with his hair and all that. So he just worked TV. Do you know who he worked with? Do you recall? In 1980?
A couple of jobbers, because we never even seen it. We see photos of it, but he must have pissed them off royally. And it was like, they didn't even show his matches. And I don't know what the hell happened with it, but it's like, man, him and the Giant, him and Backlund, it would have been great. We would have just.
I'll tell you that in 75, it was very similar. So I don't really have a favorite WrestleMania moment. I have favorite NWA Starrcade moments, but not so much. Maybe Steamboat and Savage. I also liked Piper at WrestleMania 3, Piper and Adrian Adonis, the hair versus hair, which, I don't know, that whole show was pretty good for that time period, even though I knew they were lying about the attendance record as they were last weekend. They weren't anywhere near 25,000 either night, is what the venue is saying. But in 1975, I was shooting with all the Tri-WF guys at Vince TV, Napolitano, Frank Amato, Apter, myself, and Arizzi. And Jerry Graham had done this thing in L.A. where he dropped about 80 pounds, and Ernie Roth came in to L.A. and was managing him and to get him set up for this all-important taping where they did 3. It was like, I think it was the Hamburg Vince Sr. tapings in Pennsylvania. And Vince's idea was to have a senior division with Antonino Rocca, who he just started using on color commentary. He couldn't speak English very well. He was doing it with Vince Jr., his first partner before Pat or Bruno. And Rocco, they were going to try to involve Rogers and Jerry Graham, all the old-time legends, and just a seniors thing. So it all boiled down to how Jerry Graham did on TV in those 3 squash matches with the Grand Wizard managing him. And he had dropped all that weight, and he was all psyched up for it. And Vince decided to just put the kibosh on the whole thing, and Jerry just started drinking the next day. And Ernie was worried about him, and Jerry put all that weight right back on. He'd gone on this vegetable and rice diet, he said, to us when he was in L.A. In the dressing room, and I'd see him. He was doing everything. He wanted to make this thing work. And he was clean and sober, for that brief period of time. Everything was his way, but Vince, I guess, just thought he looked too old or something. And it was very depressing, and I don't even know if anybody remembers that. Jerry Graham, wrestling with the Wiz managing him. So it was like your Ox Baker situation, which this is the first I'm hearing about Ox. I don't recall it at all, because I got to shoot Ox everywhere. Dick the Bruiser territory against Bruiser, and for the IWA briefly, and of course for Sheik. And in St. Louis, one of the weirdest wrestling at the Chase, that was their TV show on Saturdays, the Chase Hotel, very swanky place. They had, out of nowhere, they had a heel, Ox Baker against Baron von Raschke, when Raschke was really good in 76. And that was a one and done. I mean, Muchnick never really put heels together, but he had Ox, and Ox actually was doing some holds.
They even have Ox Baker in a Madison Square Garden program that Ox is coming. And it's like, man, so we were excited. But then all of a sudden, whoosh, he's gone. Never
and
happened.
the magical, the most magical phrase in all of pro wrestling, which is every indie fed lives by this phrase: card subject to change. That's your magical out for any angle that doesn't go your way, right? Or whenever someone doesn't work out in a territory, you just say, "Hey, card subject to change," right? Even if you don't get a main event that you're looking for, or the wrestler you were hoping to see booked doesn't show up, you just say, "Hey, that little asterisk right there at the bottom of every wrestling flyer that I've ever seen gives you that little out so that you don't have to be on the hook."
Let me go nearing. I'm looking at AOL right now. You have to see. They're showing some 60s photos of Angie Dickinson when she might have been one of the prettiest ladies on the planet. And if I'm sexist and I'm
poor Larry King,
whatever, she's turning 90 today on my birthday. I didn't know I shared a birthday with her.
Wow. She's 10 years younger than you.
Wait, was she a knockout? You look at some of those women back then, and I think the women of today, I know how sexist, but Anne Margaret, Angie Dickinson, Raquel Welch, we had some really beautiful.
They were more glamorous.
But they had meat on them. They had weight. Today they want to look like a skeleton with lipstick, and it's like, I like my woman to have something behind her, not just come in there.
Well, they fill in the skeleton stuff with plastic.
Yeah, you don't like Kim Kardashian with the caboose, the added caboose?
Right. It's a lot of it's silicone.
I have nothing on.
A lot of it's a combination between silicone and Botox. What isn't Botox is shrunk down with Botox is inflated with silicone. Or
speaking of cancel culture, watch Bill Maher's Real Time on HBO with he had Sharon Osbourne on last night. The place went bananas when she came out. You got to watch it. I'm sure Evan was watching it.
Let me just say something. I find it interesting that Maher, who Republicans loathe, if you really listen to him, especially last night, he was saying, there's good cops and bad cops. Don't hit us with every white person is inherently racist. It's ridiculous. He was really, speaking his mind, and I think moderate Republicans would, actually understand that, he's honest. He's honest. I mean, he said you can't defund or abolish police. What are you, crazy? I mean, and I'm a liberal saying this. Like I said at the start of the show, there's good police and bad police. My friend just retired a couple of months ago. This guy was in New York for 25 years. He never pulled his gun out once. Any situation he defused. Okay, the good cops are leaving because of all the heat.
And the good cops turn into bad cops. What we don't address in this country, and I don't want to bring heat to it, but people die from medical mistakes. I forget what the number is, but it's up there. And we don't go burning down hospitals or say get rid of doctors, defund doctors. It's like, well, what the hell? Who do we turn to? It's a necessary evil, if you want to use that terminology, but it goes with the territory. But the alternative is not good. It's not going to, defunding the police. And when you talk about Black Lives Matter, the black community suffers the worst in these situations because now they're stuck. Who's going to come in? Like, you have these protests. Seattle's the worst. Okay, as far as every night, they're smashing windows, they're burning, they're doing that. And it's like, businesses are not tolerating it. They're leaving. It's like, what the hell? Why do you tolerate this?
Mike's leaving too. He's had enough.
The tax-paying people are like, I'm out of here. And the real estate companies are like, what the hell are you doing to us? But yet, you keep voting in the same people every year who just say, oh, well, this is wrong, that's wrong. You got to be heard. You got to express yourself. It's like, but at some point, you wake up one day and it's like, who's paying for this shit? Okay, because the guy that works the 12 hours a day, he's gone, and now what do you got left? The what the heck do you call them? Antifa people. It's like, Well, what the hell do you call
That's
that?
no Antifa. That's don't get me started on that, or anybody associated with Cauliflower Alley throwing that out to get board articles off on. I wrote some articles on some of the great talent, that we've even honored at Cauliflower Alley. Mark Henry and Booker T and his brother Stevie Ray, and they attended along with a lot of today's wrestlers. Sasha Banks, they attended Black Lives Matter peaceful rallies, just marching peacefully. I wrote about it. I thought it was huge. Also, Dwayne Johnson marched on one. And I thought, geez, these are all the biggest names, at least in wrestling, from that company. And it was yanked, and I was told, oh, no, that's Antifa stuff. We can't have that up on the website. And now we're hearing pretty much everybody saying that's bullshit. There was never any Antifa. So to label it as a subversive or I don't know what the wording is. I'm a little tired, but subversive group. Black Lives Matter was just people, and we need to, whatever, allow them to speak, because it's not an unreasonable thing. And I'm not even talking about the police stuff. I'm just talking about a lot of the other stuff, pay inequities, etc. But that was labeled Antifa, and I was really pretty pissed off. I thought that was dumb, and now it's almost like the QAnon thing. We're learning that's complete bullshit if you watch that HBO documentary, multi-series on that, as well as the word Antifa. I think Trump people just created that to discredit people that were, upset about that.
Oh, you're on the inside, Dr. Mike. Are we having Cauliflower Alley this year?
So far, it's scheduled for September, and hopefully we'll be at that herd immunity thing, because otherwise, I don't want to be indoors if it's not safe, because people come in, wrestling fans, a lot of them just aren't the cleanest, brainiest, sorry to say, and I'm not going to trust.
Are they stinky? Some of them?
Yeah, Evan and I talk about the wobbles, those
right.
And where it's held.
So this thing better be completely over, or many of us aren't going because we still don't feel safe. I don't want to be
where it's held, you could smell
we
the
have lost
cigarette
Evan
smoke
for a
in the
second
place.
there.
This is a can of deodorant.
Yeah, use it.
All right, hey, we're getting close on time here. I just wanted to find out from Mike, because he's the birthday guy. If you had one birthday wish that could get completed for professional wrestling, you could make one wish to come true. What would it be when you blow out the candles of your cave?
I want to see, I've been lobbying about this all year, even during Women's History Month of March, is equality, pay equality, booking equality. I don't want to see shit booking for people like Charlotte Flair having to do that Lacey Evans I'm pregnant crap by Ric Flair. I want to see equality, pay, everything. And we're better, we're not there yet, with men, women, and minority folks.
That's a great thought. Nikita, why don't you plug your book and tell fans how they can get a hold of you if they want to get in touch?
When It Was Real, it's not about me. It's not about Nikolai. It's about us as wrestling fans of the 70s. You can get it from crowbarpress.com, Scott Teal's site, or the Kindle versions on Amazon.com. And I extend to Dr. Mike 10%. You get me booked, Dr. Mike, you be my agent, and wherever we go, you got 10% in your pocket.
No, let's just party. Let's go around the country when it's safe, and I'll get you booked at the Barnes & Noble stores and Books Incorporated and other great indie book places.
If there are any left after the pandemic.
But managing, too. I'm not done. I'm not done, Dr. Mike. I'm not done.
Oh, I know you're not.
Us old bastards got to stick together.
And Evan, do you have any particular?
We're all we got. That's right.
That's it.
Any particular
Evan,
what?
You want to keep our fans informed about your book that's coming out?
Yes, it's in production. It will be out some point this year. It's 400 or so pages, nearly 100 pictures, many of them Dr. Mike's, and it's 100 tales from my life. ranging from pro wrestling to making the wrestler to working on 350 days, etc., so on. But it is not all wrestling. And I don't think it needs to be for adults who have other interests. So I'm excited about it. And it's basically my life's work. It's basically telling my life from the 60s and 70s to now. And it's been an interesting ride. I was just telling somebody today, I am very proud of the films we've worked on. Nikita's in a film I did, Wrestling Then and Now, with Dwayne Walker and Nikolai and Don Dr. Death Arnold and Kowalski, and it's on Amazon. People can enjoy that. And we did a lot of this stuff on pennies, and I never got rich from any of it, but I'm proud of all of it. And so when I see Robert De Niro, who I'm a fan of, crying that he's got $500 million, but he's got to pay alimony, I don't really empathize that much. $500 million.
Is that what he's got?
Our good friend Rip Rogers, he posted something a couple of weeks ago. He said, you spend all this time in the business doing what you love. It's not how much money you have in the bank. It's how much joy you have in your heart. That's when you know you're successful. And it's like, yeah, that makes it.
That's a great sentiment to end on. And really appreciate you coming on the show this week. Happy birthday, Mike. It's great to have you as our host. And
let's have a national book tour, Nikita and Evans.
It's going to be a few months, but yeah, that'd be fun.
Sounds like a plan. All right, guys, we'll see you all next week, and we'll have you again on the show, Nikita. Thank you again for being here. And we'll see everyone next week. Good night.